Welcome back. Hundreds of protesters rallied outside the White House yesterday demanding President Trump's removal after he threatened to destroy Iran's whole civilization. This follows his threat to target power plants and bridges in Iran. Critics say if he had gone ahead with such an attack, it would have constituted a war crime. But the White House is waving off those concerns. In a statement, the deputy press secretary said, quote, "The Iranian people welcome the sound of bombs because it means their oppressors are losing." Oona Hathaway is a professor of law at Yale Law School and the president-elect of the American Society of International Law, and joins us from New Haven to discuss this. Oona, good morning. Who exactly gets to decide what constitutes a war crime? Because the past 24, 48 hours, we've heard this debated.
Yeah, well, so a war crime is a serious violation of international humanitarian law. And making threats like to wipe out an entire civilization is making a threat clearly to commit war crimes. As is threats to destroy civilian infrastructure, water treatment plants, electrical plants, and bridges with no clear purpose, no clear military purpose. So those would all be war crimes if, in fact, they had been carried out.
Now, what do you make of the White House's justification that Iranians would welcome the sound of falling bombs, and the fact that the president made this threat less than 24 hours ago from when we are speaking, and it seems to have done it as a negotiating tool? Is that justified?
It's absolutely not justified, no. And let's put aside whether, in fact, he's right about that. I question the truth of whether, in fact, Iranians welcome this. But even if they did, and even if this was an effective negotiating tactic, it's absolutely not lawful. You can't make threats of use of force in order to get a better deal. That is clearly illegal under the United Nations Charter. It's clearly illegal under the Geneva Conventions and international humanitarian law. And it's clearly illegal under the Vienna Convention on Law of Treaties. So this is absolutely not justified. And even if the president thinks that this is helping him make a better deal, which I do question, because it really raises questions about whether the White House is actually behaving rationally. But even if that was true, it would still be very much a violation of international law. And
we all know that because of the expression, the fog of war, sometimes there can be strikes and killings that were seemingly not intentional, accidental. So what might the consequence be for the U.S. president if such actions were carried out?
Yeah, so, what's troubling about these threats and about much of what we've been hearing from the White House and from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth are threats that make clear they don't actually care about the law, and they don't care about the obligations to protect civilians, which is the core obligation of the law. Really, what the law is trying to do is protect people during war. It's trying to protect innocent civilians who have done nothing wrong, who are not legitimate military targets. It's trying to protect them from violence. And much of what we've been hearing out of the White House and out of the Secretary of Defense are threats to ignore that law, which has, again, that purpose of protecting human beings during wartime. And what it's very troubling, part of the reason that's so troubling is that when we see things like the strike on the girls' school that killed over 150 people, we have to wonder, are they really being careful? Are they taking their legally required precautions to make sure that they're verifying the targets, that they're making sure the targets are actually military objectives? They're checking the maps to make sure that they've been updated. They look at pattern of life to make sure that there aren't people using these buildings in ways that they're not expecting. And given that they seem to completely disregard the law and its protective principles, it raises real questions as to whether these are real mistakes and whether the U.S. military is doing all it should be doing to making sure that it's protecting the civilians who are innocent in the midst of all this.
Well, I appreciate you giving us some insight into all of this, and the threat alone can have its own consequence for the U.S. Politically. Oona Hathaway, thanks for your time this morning.